Okay, welcome to the lesson on tracking. So, first thing you'll need to do is open a copy of Nuke X. And I'm going to go ahead and pull in the shots that we're going to be tracking. Okay, here it is. And this is an aerial shot that was shot with a DJI helicopter. And as we can see, the frame range for the comp is not correct. So the first thing we'll do here is we'll look at the frame range, and we'll, by putting our mouse over the node graph, press S to call up the frame range, and we can see that this is correct. Full size format should be set to HD, and it is in fact 24 frames per second. So we'll close that. We'll set this to the global frame range and go to frame 1001, and here's our shot. Now we can see that this does have an alpha channel in it. So with the mouse over the viewer, we'll press A to verify that it's a clean alpha channel. It is, but it doesn't take much work to put down a shuffle node and just make sure that you do have a clean alpha channel. So we're going to solve the position of this camera and the motion of this camera. We're going to reverse engineer this 2D piece of video which has filmed the world, which is 3D, and converted it into this 2D image. So we're going to reverse engineer that process to get the camera and rebuild a 3D representation of this as points. So we don't want to track the sky necessarily, so we'll put down a roto node, and we're going to do a quick Bezier just to take out the sky real quick. So I'm just going to hop through this like every 100 frames. And before I do anything else, I'm going to save this. So go File, Save Comp As, and let's see here. Go back to the volumes, save here. Save it as version 2. Okay, so just going to go through this very loosely and animate this shape as we move it. It's got the auto keyframe down. You can see it's setting down little blue keyframes. So we just basically want to put an alpha channel over the sky to mask out the sky. Now, next we're going to hit Tab and put down a camera tracker node. Now the camera tracker node lives in the 3D tab here. See, right there, camera tracker. Okay. And we're going to connect it to the source. Now, we could use the mask input here and then set this to use the mask alpha, or we could just copy this alpha channel into the pipe. So copy alpha to alpha, and we're now copying this channel in. So now we have a shuffle node, clean alpha. Now we have this alpha. Okay. I'll go down here, go back to the color view. We're going to tell it to use the source alpha. And then we go to the settings tab, go back to the first frame here, and we want to preview the features. So we'll preview these features, and you can see it's not putting any features where the mask is. Now if the mask isn't in there, it's not going to put any features down because the alpha channel is solid white. So we'll re-enable that node, and let's up the number of features to say 300, and that's going to double the amount of features it tracks. So we don't know very much about this camera. We don't know the focal length, so we'll leave it at unknown constant because we know it's a constant, not a zoom. We don't know the film back size, and there's no preset for the DJI little tiny camera. We do know that there is lens distortion, so we'll set this to unknown lens. Now, this is going to tell the camera tracker to calculate the lens distortion as well as the camera position and camera movement. And the film back size, we'll just leave that at that. So, upping the error threshold to a higher number will make the camera tracker reject tracks that have a higher number of error. So I'm going to do that because there's a lot of things in here that move, like blowing trees and stuff, and possibly reflections. We can maybe weed some of that out, or not reflections, but specular highlights, like on the snow and stuff. So that's not going to be super reliable tracking markers. Now you can see that some of these have chosen kind of weird spots. If we click refine feature location, it's going to make these snap to corners and better blobs. So see what happened there? So instead of this, it picked this. Instead of this, it picks this. Instead of this, I think it picks that. Let's see. Yeah, so see, it's choosing slightly better features. Now, why doesn't it automatically just choose slightly better features? I don't know. I didn't build the thing. So, go ahead and save that, Command S, and hit track. Now, what Nuke is doing is it's tracking these features, and on each frame, it's looking for the pattern. And it's basically doing the same thing you do with a 2D tracker, except it's doing 300 features per frame. Or it's attempting to do 300 features per frame. So it'll track to the end, and then it'll track backwards. So we'll bring it back here when it's done. Okay, so this is almost done. It took about 2-3 minutes. So it's a pretty fast process. 300 frames is, you know, a pretty long shot. So next, we just hit solve. So track, solve. And again, there's very few settings in the node itself. Number of features, you really never, I mean not never, but you really don't need to change the track threshold. And you really could probably get on fine without refining the feature location. You should put as much information in here as you can, you know. If you know the film back that it was photographed on, you should definitely put that in. So it's taking its sweet time. That's a bad sign. There we go. Okay, so here we have it. Now, if we have our viewer over the top here, we hit tab, and we can see the point cloud that it's generated. And there it is. Looking pretty good. This is the sidewalk, looks like. Here's the street. Here is the house on the corner, I believe. And, you know, so probably a tree right here or something. In any case, the next thing we need to do is actually get some useful data out of this. So we'll hit Scene Plus, which is going to create this network down here. So creates all this stuff, creates our camera, which if we view this now through the scene, we can see here's our camera, which is giant, and it's moving down the street, like we would expect. Now it's put the camera so that the camera is relatively level. Now we can tell by looking at this footage that the camera is in fact looking down. So what we'll do is we'll go back to 2D here, and we'll select some points that we know are on the ground. This is the ground. So we'll right click, and we'll say ground plane, set to selected. There we go. Now if we go back into 3D here, we can see that the street is now on the ground, and our giant camera moves through the scene. You can go in here and actually scale the size of the camera so it makes more sense to the scene. But the reason the camera looks giant compared to our scene is because if we select 2 points like this, we got to shift to select those. Okay, so shift to select 2 points. So here's 2 points, and we're going to say that this sidewalk is about 3 feet long. So we're going to right click on these points and set scene, add scale distance. So now we've created a scale constraint here. So if we look at the scene and we look at the scale constraint, we have this, and it's set itself to be measured at 0.0561857 meters. So those are meters. So now, next, we need to convert that to feet to meters. It's what we need. Equals this number here. So we'll just copy that, and we'll paste that in here. There we go. Now, here is that distance between those points is 3 feet. So, now that's done, we go back here, and we look in our scene. You can now see the camera is much smaller because the scene is much bigger. Now, we set those points there to be the ground, and they're over the origin, but it seems to me like this is still kind of going uphill a little bit, which is actually correct because this is a floodplain, this block, and it is on a bit of a hill, but it doesn't seem to really look right to me, and doesn't look like it's on a hill, even though it is. So if you actually got this scene, you might think that whoever gave this to you does not, in fact, know what they're doing. So we're going to go ahead and rotate the z-axis a little bit. If I click in front of this 0 and hold down Option, then I can raise it up or I can raise it up or down by 1 numerical value. So I just want to rotate it by 4 degrees. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to say that's good enough. So now we have this. Next thing we want to do here is let's create a second camera. And we won't link this one. We'll just create a camera. This will have all the values baked in it. So here it is. And we are going to make it blue. And my color palette popped up on my other screen. So, okay, that's how I like to see it. So we're going to make this blue. And there we go, blue. So now this is a projection camera. And as you can see here, there's now a blue camera in the scene. And also a white camera in the scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a card, which is just a 2D piece of geometry. It has a width and a height, but no depth. And we're going to go place that card over here along the fence. And we can see that's the sidewalk, so we got the fence going along here. These look like they're on the fence. Ha ha ha, on the fence. Okay, so now I'm going to scale this up like that. And I'm going to scale it in the x-axis only. Oops, cancel that. I'm going to scale in the x-axis here. So again, option and drag. Okay, so there's the fence. And I'm also going to grab a constant node and pipe that into the background. And the reason I did that is because if we look through the scanline render node, so we've got this. This is what's coming out of the scanline render node. So it's got the undistorted plate from our distortion node, and it's got the points over it. So it's doing the comp in this node. We don't want that. So we'll connect the constant. So the format hasn't changed, but now it's just outputting black. And if we look at the alpha channel, it just has the alpha of the points. So let's create a dot node. And here's the camera tracker points. We can increase those or decrease them depending on what we need. And we can certainly disconnect them so that they're not being rendered through the scanline render node. So that's what's happening there. So now we have this card. Oh, and the lens distortion node. Here's the lens distortion that the camera tracker calculated as I said it would. Here's the undistorted plate. And if we disable this by pressing D, here's the distorted plate. So you can see it doesn't look distorted, but once you undistort it, you know, you can go and say, well, wow, that was actually quite distorted. And it is, because this camera has the super wide angle lens for its aerial photography capabilities. So let's get that out of the way. Now, we have a card and we have a camera. We're going to project something onto this fence. So we need a node called a project 3D node. So let me just close this stuff for a minute. Project 3D node is a shader. It lives right here. So we'll grab that. It's like a movie theater. It's like the bleachers in a movie theater. Here's the camera. And here's the screen. Now, it just needs to know what it's projecting. So now, we'll have it project the plate through it here. And we'll wire that in. And now, if we look, if we move our viewer down to our scanline renderer, we can see that this is being projected. And it's moving. It shouldn't be moving. So let's work on frame 1100. And let's grab a frame hold node. And like we've done in the past, we're going to freeze time. So I'm going to grab a second frame hold, and I'm going to command drag this value to this value. So now I've expression linked these two. So if we need to change the frames, this one will automatically update. So let's frame hold this on 1100, and let's frame hold this on 1100. And now if we were to like grab a paint node, and actually, well, let's look at that for guide geometry real quick. If we were to grab a paint node and simply paint something on the front here, you know, some manner of stuff like that, disconnect that. So now we have this paint node, which is frame held on the frame it painted on, which is 1100. We just painted that. It's passing through this projection node, which is using this camera, which is now frozen on 1100, to project it onto this card into our scene. So now if we put our mouse over the viewer and hit tab, there we go. We can see that our stuff is on that card. There we go. So now if we grab a merge node, we have this tab, we have this. This is what's coming out of the scanline render network, okay? It's being photographed by this camera, which is moving. So if we put it over the top of our footage, right? Then let's grab a dot node. Now we have that over the top, and it looks great, just like it looked up there. So now if we move through here, we can see that it's tracked right to the fence, right? So that's how projection works. Now, one thing we could do to help this out is we could go back into our camera tracker node and create a distortion, which just creates this node. So here it is, distortion, Command-Shift-X, okay. Now, it's the exact same lens distortion node. It just has undistort unchecked, which means it's applying distortion instead of removing distortion. And here's the distortion that it's applying, the radial distortion and the distortion center. So if we put that in there, everything goes haywire. So why is that happening? Because we don't have enough edge pixels in there. So if we take the overscan now and start to overscan this image, we can see that we're now bringing back pixels that we need for our distortion to work. Okay? So that's all that is. So now, you don't always need a projection node. You can put things right onto cards. And for that, we have a zombie. Okay, so here's our zombie. So we could use the expression start at here, or we could go into the dope sheet and drag him to start at frame 1001, which, as you can see, is interactively adding an offset. And we're going to do start at 1001. It's much simpler than dragging stuff around in the dope sheet. So let's go reconnect our point cloud and go back. You know, anytime you go to the scene node, it automatically switches to 3D view. So if you hold down Command, you can orbit around the 3D view. And I'm using a pen, so for me it's middle mouse and left click to zoom in and out, and then option left click to move up and down. So I'm going to orbit around here, and I'm going to hit tab and create a piece of geometry. Actually, I'll get it from the shelf for now. It's down here, geometry. So I'm going to create a card, and there it is. It automatically appears in the scene. So I'll just plug it in. We're going to use it. And I'm going to move it. I'll put the zombie on it, and it is going to automatically take the image aspect ratio. And where is it? I lost it. Okay, there it is. So you can change its orientation here simply by doing this, but you can also just use its translate, rotate, and scale to, translate, rotate, and scale, much as the name suggests. So we know where the ground plane is. It's, for all effects and purposes, on the ground here on this grid. So let's go full screen for this for a minute. Now let's move him upstairs. Oops, wrong thing. And let's just position him on the ground plane. Oh, that's our graffiti that we're looking through there. I think maybe a touch higher. Okay, that's going to look pretty good, I think. So let's go back and see where our little zombie guy is. And he's right there. And he is way too small. He's like a tiny zombie. So let's scale him up a little bit to a realistic zombie size. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's do that. And now we could use a particle system to generate a bunch of geometry, but we're not quite there yet. And it could be confusing. So what we'll do is we'll add a transform geo to this. So a transform geo is just like a transform, except it moves geometry in 3D space. So it transforms geometry. So we'll go here, and I'm going to set a keyframe in the translation. And I guess I'll just look at this in 3D space here. And then I'll go to the end and orbit around. And, he walks, he's pretty slow, so let's only move this forward like a little bit. So now we've animated, we've set down keyframes. So by setting our first keyframe, set key, Nuke will automatically set keyframes after that. So when we moved it, we automatically set our second keyframe. So as this guy walks, the card moves forward. Since this is what's called a 2.5D, 2.5D element, this is a 2D element that's in 3D space. Although it may look pretty good, like 3D with the shadow and everything, if we were to take this card, and we can do that through the transform geo, if we were to take this card and rotate it 90 degrees on its y-axis, then our guy would disappear because we're looking at him right down his 2D plane. So he's still there. So if we hop back into 3D space now, we can see he's right there. So, oh, okay. You know what? Let's undo that. He's not right there because the center point of the camera moved him. So let's rotate him in the card. Okay, because see the center point of the transform is there. So let's rotate him in the card, 90 degrees. Okay. Now let's go back to 2D right here, tab. Okay, so there he is. So he's a skinny little guy. We're looking at him down his axis. So he has no depth. So if we put him at 45 degrees, he looks a little squashy. So let's keep him at 90. Or I'm sorry, let's keep him at 0 like that. Now an axis node will allow you to feed, an axis input will allow you to input a secondary transformation on top of this transformation. So you could add a secondary transformation via the axis node, and look will simply look at a camera. So if we plugged this into the camera, it would make this node look at the camera. So let's see what that did in 3D space here. I don't know what happened to our card. There it is. Select it. And let's look at that camera. Okay. So it's over there. That is pretty weird. That might be a bug. It's not really supposed to do that, I don't think, unless there's something going on here that we'd have to troubleshoot. In any case, let's create a new scene node, and we'll plug this animation here into this scene. And we'll plug this scene through that. Now, scene node is just like a container. It doesn't really do anything. It just has a few parameters, but it allows us to be more organized. So let's copy this. Actually, let's take this and let's put this at the bottom of the scene. So what we're going to do now is copy these cards and we're going to make a lot of zombies. By offsetting these cards here. And then they'll all feed into this one scene. And then they'll all have the move forward animation of this transform geo, rather than having to create an individual one for each. So if we just open the card parameters, we can see here we don't want to move the Y axis because we want them all to be on the ground. So I'm just going to option and move some of these guys around here. And I want this guy actually to be the back guy. So we'll have him be the back. So now we've done this little staggered group. Let's use that, and let's use this little bit here to create a ranking file. So I'm just going to copy and paste this scene and add a transform geo to it. And if you need to find that and you forget what it's called, it's here in the modify transform geo. As you can see, there's a lot of nodes you can use to modify geometry, a lot of shader options, a couple lights, and a number of geometry nodes. So Nuke's 3D package is pretty intense. So let's paste down that scene node again, and let's start copying our clones in. So now when we have this one, again, we don't want to change the Y axis of this at all. So I'm going to just option click in here and offset them in Z a little bit. Okay. So there's that group. We'll just copy this and paste it down and branch it off of our main scene again. So this is kind of a quick and dirty crowd. But let's see, it's kind of fun to create a zombie crowd. So let's move these guys forward. Okay, I don't like that one guy that was right in front of that other guy right there. Okay, so that's nice. They sort of have a replicated look to them, so let's paste this down one more time. And let's let's grab another transform geo and Command C and Command V. So let's grab this guy, plug him in there, and we'll plug that in there, plug that in there, plug that in there, and we'll plug this into the scene. Okay. So we have this transform view. I'm going to try to find this guy right here. There he is. He's on this one. So there's that guy. Let's grab that. And let's move him back. Like that. Okay. Okay. So let's move him around a little bit more. Let's move him right forward. No, that'll be good. For the sake of this demonstration getting too out of hand. Okay. So now I'm going to select these guys and put a backdrop around them. Oh, and isn't that a lovely color? So let's make this a little bit more zombie colored, like that, and call this the zombies. Okay, so here's our zombies. They live in this box. And put a backdrop around that. And this is our paint. Okay. So that's basically the gist of it. You can put these on cards, and you can also do projections to track things in. And I'll carry on with this just for a sec, and I'll show you some technical grading that we can do here, and maybe we'll put something a little bit more provocative on this fence rather than orange and blue lines. It's like Bronco colors, right? Okay, so here's our little herd of walking zombies, and they seem like there might be a little bit of slippage in there. Maybe we need to adjust this a little bit. They don't seem to actually be moving forward at the correct rate. And it does seem to be a little bit of slippage. So let's look at this real quick. And you can see my error, my solve error is pretty high. So this camera will need to be replaced if we're going to do this. So let me grab a new camera here. I'll just create this camera for now. Oops, actually, I'll just recreate that camera in a sec. So let's look at taking care of that slippage that's in there. And I'm going to go adjust the max error here down just a little bit, and the track error down a little bit, and maybe take the track length up. And want to make sure we have enough trackers to get a solve. So let's delete the unsolved and delete the rejected. And that brings us down to 0.89. And if we update the solve, that should improve our reprojection error as well. So 0.86, okay, pretty good improvement. So we have to recreate this camera, so let's just create, boom, simple, and projection camera, change color to blue, so we don't get confused. And it's not blue. There we go. And just grab it, Command Shift, swap that out, delete. Okay, so now let's grab this. It's wonderful. Let's put a transform node below it and adjust its scale. And its position. And its rotation. And continue to adjust its scale a little bit more. And let's look through the, let's make our box a little bigger. And bring this down, bring this up. Let's look through it with the viewer. And let's put a roto node below it. And actually, instead of a roto node, let's delete that, and let's do a keyer node. So we'll just do a quick and dirty key on this. Luminance key. Let's look at the alpha channel, and let's invert it, and not quite what we're looking for. Okay, good enough. And if we add a pre-mult below that, because we created an alpha channel, now we need to pre-multiply the image by that alpha channel. Simple. And there it is. So let's go back to the color image, and let's look down here. And there's our graffiti now. And we can go ahead and use this transform to refine its position. In fact, let's put it a little closer to camera. So there you go. Now, let's deal with the color of these zombies here. So let's gamma this up, and we can see that these zombies are, their blackest point is much blacker than our plate's blackest points, I would say. Actually, maybe not. Shadows of this and that seem to be about the same. But just for good measure, we should grade them anyway. So let's put down a grade node, and we'll grade them all before they're fed into 3D. So we need to unpre-multiply this by the alpha, because we don't want to grade the alpha. So let's go ahead and look through this, and let's gamma it up again, and let's pick a black point, like right there. So Command Shift or Command Option Shift to pick this point. So that's the black point. And now let's gamma down and pick a white point, like right there. Command Option Shift. Let's grab those pixels. That'll be our white point. Oh, shoot. I messed that up. So, white point. And now black point. I reselected the black point. Or I reselected the black point when I meant to select the white point by failing to select the color pickers. Actually, let's do that. Now let's go look at the plate. And we want to get the blackest pixels here. But really what we want here is we want the shadow color. So let's go here and select this shadow color. Oh, I keep doing that. Okay, So now we want to select the shadow color as the lift. Okay. Command Shift, there we go. And now we're going to select a gain, which is going to be our brightest pixels, which is going to be like zombie flesh tone color. So let's see what's bright enough to be zombie flesh tone in here. That's pretty bright. Definitely the sky is bright. Let's select this snow, actually, and say Command Shift on this snow. So there's our white point. So now we've told this grade node that the black and white points of this image are here, and we're remapping the lift to the black point and remapping the white point to the gains values. So old black point, old white point, new black, new white. So if we go over here and set this back to a happy place and find our zombie and disable this node, we can see we've now changed his color, which will hopefully make him fit a little better into our scene. Which I think they do. But let's do some additional grading on top of that. So let's add another grade. And let's, again, Premol RGBA. And this time I want to gamma up just a little bit. And I want to bring the lift up just a hair or two. I feel like the shadows are a bit too pronounced. Maybe we can live with that. Just a touch of gamma. And a touch of multiply in there. And they seem a little on the bluish side. So let's open up the gain. And let's just push a little bit more yellow into them. Okay. So there's that. And what else could we do here? We could put a grade node on the bottom of this plate here. And we could give this a bleach bypass look. So let's delete that grade node. Actually, let's get a saturation node. And let's take a saturation node and desaturate this plate. Okay. So that's step one. And now let's G for grade. Let's grab another grade. And let's go ahead and in the gain, let's make this kind of blue. Ooh, we probably need to grade that too, but we'll let that go for now. So we'll make this kind of blue. And now let's merge these two together, A over B. And now let's mix, before we do this, let's desaturate and let's put another grade node in there. And let's look at it and see what it's doing. And let's decrease the gamma and way cook the whites. And decrease the gamma. So we have this really saturated looking, or really contrasty thing here. So let's now, and you would do this in DaVinci with a layer node. And in the layer node, you would use the A inputs mask controls to adjust the density. But we're going to do it right in the mix node where it belongs, or in the merge node. We're going to mix the two together. So there's contrasty, there's the blue, and if we just mix between them, we can get kind of like a bleach bypass kind of look. We're just just going to fuss with this until we find the sweet spot. Okay? So that's kind of cool. Okay, so welcome back. I spent a little bit more time on this and increased the size of the crowd here and added a little bit of fog with this node called the TX Fog node, something you can download from Nukepedia. And I could probably spend a little bit more time on this. You can see as it goes through the fog layers, there's like an exposure shift, and that's just because of the way the fog is created. And that this right here is probably the back extent of it. So a little bit more time on the fog. But as you can see, our little zombie guys are marching along, and you know, there's so many of them that you know, it's not immediately obvious that they're exact copies of each other, except for the fact that they're all walking in step, which could be easily sorted out with a time offset node. Maybe starting front to back or something, so that the ones in the back still have a little bit of walking motion. In any case, there's a lot of stuff you can do with this shot, and you know, you can track anything you want in there. Actually, I think they're moving backwards now that I look at them. They seem to be walking backwards. But the point of this exercise is not to... They are totally moving backwards. Anyway, the point of this exercise is totally not to make a zombie crowd so much as it is to learn the basic steps in applying a texture to a card and placing it in a scene, projecting something through a camera to put it on the fence, which I actually removed in the final render, and learning the basics of the camera tracker, because 3D land is where it's at. Everything is comped in 3D space. Not everything, but a lot of things are done in 3D space, and it's very time-saving and a very good skill to have to speed up your work and increase the quality of your work. So, just to recap what we got here, we have the plate, clean alpha channel. We have a rotoshape feeding in an alpha channel, which is the mask for this camera tracker, which after we track the scene, we generate a scene plus and either link or don't link the output. If we link it, it creates an expression link. It creates a lens distortion node that it calculates, which we can use to add the lens distortion to our CG elements, and it creates a camera, a scene, a scanline render. We put a constant on the background so that we're only getting our 3D elements out of the 3D scene, and we set up this projection to project something onto the fence here, and I added this fog, but let's turn that off. There's our projected element on the fence, and here's my little zombie horde setup. It's kind of a mess right now, but you know, that could be easily cleaned up, and it probably should be cleaned up and labeled. We then did a quick grade on the zombies so that they fit into the plate a little bit better, and we used a couple grade nodes and a saturation to create a bit of a bleach bypass look, and then the rest of everything is just embellishments that I added. This node and these nodes. Like I said, these are from Nukepedia. These won't, you'll have to download and install these. They're called TX Fog. If you want to have a play with them, they're pretty easy to use. And then I used the volume ray light to add an additional volume of light onto the scene and rendered it out with this right node and here we have it. So um, that was all fun, and I could definitely continue with this shot. I only spent about an hour putting this together, um, an hour plus whatever the class time is. So um, remember, the main purpose of this class is learning to use the camera tracker node here, which is plottingly simple. You plug it in, you hit track, and you hit solve. And the settings are, it's good to know, but I mean, you definitely need to know them. But, just the basics to get you up and running, track and solve. Two buttons. So happy tracking, happy comping. Uh, I suggest that you find moving shots of your own and try to match move them, because as the classes progress, we will be tracking lots of stuff, and it will be beneficial to you to have this workflow down and not have it be something that's confusing to you.